huge hang lifts, absurd re-racks, Lasha breaks loose, Koha retires, and most excitingly, the release of the new Weightlifting House straps. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Weightlifting House news show, the only weightlifting news show in the world. So I think we're going to have to start this week off by just going over a couple of pops. So as of today, 2 new people have been popped. They've failed for drugs. The first of whom is called Maxim Medrevsky from Belarus. He was, if you remember, 2015 under-23 European champion. Now, what's interesting about this one is a specific drug hasn't yet been associated to this case. In fact, it's currently being described as use or attempted use by an athlete of a prohibited substance. It's not even technically put down as a positive test. So I imagine perhaps this might be the first of several cases to come out from the McLaren report. This might just be pushed by evidence over actually this person having so far failed a test, or at least prior to the results of the test coming out. The second of the 2 pops was from a Russian, a 59 kilo, 3-time junior European champion called Tatiana Eleva. And she was popped for dihydrochloromethyl testosterone, which is quite a mouthful. It's basically just an anabolic steroid. But even so, she is one of a plethora now of Russian athletes who've been popped since 2016 in the sport of weightlifting. Now, before we get on to Team China, I do just very quickly want to show you the new Weightlifting House straps. Now, this is a product I've been incredibly excited to be able to show you guys. In fact, for the last week, I've just been kind of waiting for this very moment where I could talk about them. Now, for those of you who have been following Weightlifting House right from the start, you'll know that almost 3 years ago, I tried to manufacture Weightlifting House straps. I ordered a load of nylon, I ordered some logos, I stuck them together, I tried to sew them together, and they didn't come out right. In fact, they just weren't durable enough. But now it's been 3 years, and along with contacts from the Chinese weightlifting team, from the Chinese coaching team, we have developed the Chinese-style Weightlifting House straps. And I can tell you that after 3 years, they finally are incredibly durable. So I'll stick a link down below if you want to check out the new Weightlifting House straps. So speaking of China, let's just kick things off with Team China, with Xiaojun, as we so often do. Not a whole lot from him this week. In fact, there was just a video posted of a 150 kilo snatch, 160 kilo clean and jerk. These are kind of like 85 to 80-ish% lifts. They looked incredibly easy, nothing particularly difficult from him, but even so, it's good to see him moving these kind of weights as easily as they look right here. Now, moving from one Lu to another Lu, we have Lu Delin, and I'm getting increasingly excited about being able to talk about Lu Delin every week. This week he's done even more, and it's even more exciting. So the new 81 kilo Lu Delin hit a 160 kilo snatch from the floor. That's fine, we've seen him do that before. In fact, we've seen him do 170 from the floor last week. He then, however, went and did a 195 kilo clean and jerk. That's the most we've seen from him. Again, it's good, but it's not amazing. We've seen Lu and Lee do 206 and 207 at the World Championships this year. So there's still a bit of a ways to go in the clean and jerk department for Lu Delin. But he did do something completely ridiculous. Not only did he hang snatch 180 kilos again, 7 kilos over the world record, he then took a crack at 190 kilos in the hang snatch. That is 17 kilos over the world record. I think that's the heaviest hang snatch ever as a percentage of the world record, and I do want to put this out there now, he didn't make it, but it's very close. I mean, the guy pulls it unbelievably high. He doesn't even look ass to grass or as low as a lot of his Chinese brethren kind of look when they do the snatch. So there's clearly more in there. He misses it behind. The lift wasn't exactly difficult looking. It wasn't out of reach. So this 190, if he does land it soon or at any point in his career, I think is going to be the most impressive hang snatch that we've ever seen. So I've been trying to think about what are the biggest hang snatches we've ever seen, and is this the most impressive as a percentage of world record? So, of course, I think one of the most impressive hang snatches I've seen is from Artem Okulov from Russia. He did a 180 double and he did a 190 single. And he was an 85 kilo lifter. Now, that's obviously incredible, but as a percentage of the world record, because, of course, Andrei Rybakov had done 187 because he's a ridiculous snatcher, that's only like 102% of the world record. Then there's Klokov. He hang snatched 200, but Andrei Romnow had already snatched 200. Koklaev did 200 as well, but again, the world record at the time was either 213.5 or 214 by Salimi. And then, of course, there's the incredibly ridiculous 210 kilo hang snatch by Simon Martirossi in the 109. Now, even when the world record was 196, that still kind of only, in quotation marks, works out as 107% of the world record. So if Delin is going to make this 190, I don't think that there's another hang snatch in history that can compare to this. I'm sure there are tales of hang snatches that are completely ridiculous that maybe have or have not happened, but at least on camera, if Delin does 190 at 81 kilos in body weight, 17 kilos over the world record, it has to go down as the greatest hang snatch of all time. Next from China, we have another 81 kilo lifters. It's Deng Hua, who again is one of these guys who you won't know because China can only send 2 weightlifters per category. We've got Liu Xiaojun, we've got Li Dayin. But Deng Hua just went 170-200 in training. That's a 370 kilo total, which would have given him the bronze medal at the World Championships behind the 2 other Chinese weightlifters. And Deng Hua is actually improving really fast. Last year in 2019 at the National Junior Championships, he totaled 346 kilos. So he's already increased that by around 24 kilos at this point. So I think we can see that there are now in line a couple of other 81 kilo lifters who are ready to push Li Dayin once Liu Xiaojun retires after the 2020/21 Tokyo Olympics. Next from China, we have the 61 kilo snatch and total world record holder Fabin. This week, and I think he's working really hard to take the clean and jerk record back from Yuli Irawan. He ended up going heavy in the split jerk. Off the blocks, 180 kilos. Now, the world record is 174, so this is 6 kilos over. And, almost as impressively as the fact that he makes this, and it's, 3 kilos under triple body weight, is the fact that he then re-racks it so effortlessly. I mean, it kind of looks painful, but effortlessly nonetheless. Now, in comparison to the most we've ever seen, I don't know what Fabin's best jerk ever is, but I do remember that this year, back in March, so only about 4 months ago, he did attempt 192 kilos in the split jerk off the block, so 18 kilos over the world record. Had he made that, I don't know if he'd have attempted the re-rack. I mean, that seems like a little bit of a step too far. But even so, just the fact that he's attempting 192 kilos, something so far beyond anything we've seen from someone at his body weight since, I guess, the likes of Naim Suleimanoglu is really exciting. So once the clean kind of goes up and matches that jerk ability, I think it's very likely that Yuli Irawan from Indonesia is going to have to step aside for the world record that he holds on to in the clean and jerk. The world record holder in the snatch, clean and jerk and total in the super heavyweight class, Wenwen, 20-year-old Wenwen, posted some squats this week. A 230 kilo single and a 195 kilo double. Now, what I find interesting about this is the fact that Wenwen holds a clean and jerk at 196. And in the past, obviously, the most we've ever seen from a woman in the clean and jerk is Tatiana Kashrina at 193. So there's only a 7 kilo difference there. But when you look at these two squat, you wouldn't believe that Wenwen could lift as close as she does to Tatiana's peak back in 2014. I mean, this 230, even as a single, is hard. It looks heavy. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot left there. Whereas Tatiana Kashrina, I mean, I filmed her at the World Championship squatting 250 plus, and it looked fast, it looked simple. I think maybe that comes down kind of to the fact that Wenwen is so young. I mean, she set all of those world records when she was 19. She was still a teenager. So she's got a lot of developing left. Super heavyweights tend to not peak until later on in their careers. So it might just be that when we give her time, we'll start seeing Wenwen push, I guess, kind of the strength side of things even more beyond anything Tatiana did. Tatiana, who of course has the number 1 Sinclair of all time for any woman. But until then, I guess Wenwen just kind of has to be happy with the world records. Now, very quickly, a funny story about Wenwen. Back when I was filming at a competition in Austria last October, I was going to be giving a lift to Shi Ziyong back to his hotel. And I think some of you have heard this story before. I was with the Liu Xiaojun barbell guys. There was a coach that was taking the Chinese team back to their hotel, but Shi Ziyong and a couple of other weightlifters didn't make it. So I'm there walking to the car, and I know that Shi Ziyong is coming with the Liu Xiaojun guys. And then they ask me, am I going to have room for Li? And I think to myself, oh yeah, I mean, Li Dayin, he's only 81 kilos. He can easily fit in the car. Then I kind of turned around and I realized they were talking about Wenwen, who weighs, I don't know what she weighs, but I think she weighs something like 165, maybe 170 kilos. I mean, she is really big for a super heavyweight. And I kind of realized then, and I think the Lu Xiaojun Barbell guys realized at that moment too, when they saw my car and how small it was, my car rental, that there was no way that Li Wenwen was going to fit in the car. So then we had to turn around and, I mean, I can't speak Chinese, but I assumed what they were saying to her was, we're really sorry, but we just can't fit you. So then poor Li Wenwen had to just sit in the middle of this Austrian kind of hotel reception, waiting for God knows how long until a team taxi turned back up to take her home. But I felt very sorry for her at that moment. But I guess there's room for Lee Dae-in, there's just not room for Li Wenwen sometimes. Moving across now to South Korea, we have the 102 kilo world silver medalist Jin Yun Seong. This week he hit 210 kilos in the clean and jerk. He said that he wants 220 kilos next week, which is why I'm kind of just prefacing that lift by mentioning the 210 this week. I'm setting him up for the home run. So next week, hopefully we're going to see a 220. This 210, however, is still a big lift for him. He's a great snatch. He's snatched in the 180s before, but the clean and jerk always kind of lags. This 210 is a weight that he's hit more than 3 times now internationally in competition during this qualification period for the Olympics. The most we've seen from him is 216 kilos. That was from the World Championships, but it just wasn't enough to take the gold medal. Of course, Yohei Tsukansu, the most underrated 96/102 kilo lifter in the world from Belarus, took the lead. He's just too strong. He's the kind of guy who can clean and jerk 220 at most competitions. But even so, 210 from Jin Yun Seong. I'll report about the 220 if it happens next week. And, well, I certainly hope it does. Next, from South Korea, my prayers have been answered. Last week I asked you guys, where is Lee Sang? Where is sweet 67 kilo Lee Sang? Because he hadn't been posting any lifts of his snatch and clean and jerk online for a long time, just strength things. I thought maybe he was injured. As though he heard my cries, he then this week posted a 175 kilo clean and jerk to his profile. Now, of course, how does this rank in the grand scheme of things in that weight class? It's a great lift, but it's not amazing. I mean, the world record is 188 from Pak Jong-ju from North Korea. But even so, 175 at 67 is really something pretty decent. And finally, from South Korea, we have Sang Il-ham, who is a super heavyweight that I don't think I've ever reported on before. Sang Il-ham this week hit 190 kilos in the snatch. Now, this is more than we've ever seen from him in competition, and it kind of struck me and it made me realise, gosh, this is a guy that we ought to be talking about, because 190 is, well, it's no joke from anyone, regardless of the weight class. So I did a little bit of digging. I just wanted to see how he was doing in terms of Robu points. Is he the kind of guy who we're going to see at the Olympics? Right now, he's just a little bit of a way down in terms of the totals for the Robu points, but I had a quick look and I realised once you get rid of all the 109 kilo weightlifters who have competed in the super heavyweight category at least once and therefore just hold a decent spot, once they're removed, and then if he retakes his third period competition where he only got about 350 Robu points and he does something more along the lines of 850 Robu points, which is something he looks capable of based on his other performances, he will then hopefully get to about 3,200 points overall, which, for those of you who don't understand the qualifications system still, is just going to mean nothing to you. But for those who hopefully do, that will put him in a position where I'd be surprised at that point if he didn't make the Olympic Games next year. Moving slightly more east now to India, we have Jaspreet Singh, the super heavyweight, who, again, is a guy we don't mention a huge amount, and really just because he doesn't lift the biggest of weights. But this week he did do some pretty cool lifts that I thought deserved a mention. The first, a 160 kilo power snatch. Now, what I like about this, other than the fact that it's 160 kilos and he spreads his feet out wide and he catches it in a power, is the fact that he just has 2 spotters there, 2 people there who are, I mean, what do they think they're going to do? I don't know if they're planning on grabbing the bar, if it's going to hit him on the head, or what, because when he meets the bar, he fixates the bar overhead and he stands it up, and then he just drops it and they let him drop it. So I don't know what it is that they think they're going to do, but I've noticed this with a lot of Indian weightlifters that they do this. Maybe it's to do with the equipment, maybe it's to do with, I don't know, some health and safety precaution they have to abide by, but I always think it's really funny when I see people trying to spot lifts that are just so heavy, so much beyond a body weight of a regular person, that the idea that someone could catch 160 kilos plus as it plummets to the ground is kind of crazy. But anyway, 160 kilos from Jaspreet Singh. He also posted a video a few days before of a 200 kilo clean double, Again, we're not talking about 264 kind of numbers like we would with someone like Lasha, or even 242 numbers like we would with someone like Fernando Race. But even so, 200 kilos for a double is pretty darn good for Jaspreet Singh. Now, a quick update for Meso Hassona from Qatar. I've basically just been going over his cleans over the last couple of weeks. This week he added 10 kilos yet again, 210 kilos for a clean plus hang clean. And again, like last week, the hang clean is kind of touch and go, if you know what I mean. He doesn't drop it and hold it for a little while and then go again. Literally, as he turns the bar over, it lowers him down into a hang and he pulls straight back up, which is just phenomenal reversal strength, because the bar is coming down from a greater height than he would if he was just stood there with the bar, at a normal grip after the first clean. So just incredible strength from him there. I think perhaps more exciting that I found out this week, and I don't have a video because it was on a story on a Facebook video of a guy that I knew from back when I was living in Qatar. But Meso Hassona is training alongside Narudinov, and the news is that Narudinov is actually in decent shape. So last week I mentioned that he was doing some training. There was 220 kilo clean pulls off high blocks, which isn't that impressive. 100 kilo snatches, maybe it was 110, something like that. But I saw a video this week of Narudinov training alongside Meso Hassona, snatching 150 kilos for a double off blocks. Now, the most we've ever seen from Narudinov, I think in competition, is something right around 193, 194, somewhere in and around those kind of numbers. Low to mid 190s, the kind of weight he's done actually quite a few times in competition. But to see him doing this, I guess more like 73% of his best, because in training he's done 205 from the floor. But even so, really exciting to see Narudinov kind of back at it, actually pushing the numbers a little bit more alongside the new up-and-comer Meso Hassona. Over in Egypt, Abdel Rahman, aka Hulk weightlifter, hit 195 kilos for a block snatch this week. Now, I think this is right thereabouts with the most we've ever seen from him. He tends to be better in the snatch off the blocks. But even so, 195 is a huge lift. I think maybe a couple of years ago when I first started the news show, he was right around 200. Then he took this really long weightlifting hiatus. We didn't see him for a while. And now he's back again at 195. Next, we have the part of the show that I'm sure a lot of you are incredibly excited for. It's the Jourdan Super Heavyweight. It's arguably the greatest, but perhaps not particularly debatably, the greatest super heavyweight of all time, Lasha Talakadze. And this week he hit some heavy back squats and some heavy block snatches. Now, we've never really seen Lasha push the squats so much. He never really goes into those 340, 360, 380, even 400 kilo ranges like Mart Saim or like Aishiro Murakami does. But when we do see him squat, he tends to focus on just accelerating the bar. Whenever I've posted videos of Lasha, he always squats either 255 or 285, or maybe something in between, but I've never really seen him go anywhere above that. This week, however, he squatted 315 kilos as a double. And the only real context for this is the fact that 3 years ago, a video was posted of him squatting 320 kilos for a triple. And supposedly at that point in his career, his best one rep max ever, or at least the most that he'd ever gone up to, was 330 kilos. Now, I think it's very clear from both that 320 and this 315 that 330 is nowhere near his best. And he's probably looking at somewhere around 800 pounds, 363, or maybe more. In fact, I'd really be interested to see what you guys think would be his best back squat. Just comment it down below and I'll go through all the comments. But this 315, I think, looks a little bit slower than the 320 did from a few years ago. But of course, there's no context for this. We don't know where in the training session, where in the training cycle this was. This could well be the point where fatigue is particularly high. It could be the end of his second session for the day. We just don't know. But even still, it's just nice to see Lasha with some heavy weights on his back. And next, he did a 210 kilo block snatch. Now, 210 kilos seems to be almost like the daily minimum for Lasha now. We've seen him snatch it from the floor multiple times in training and in competition. We've seen him do it as a no-foot variation of the lifts, which is, incredibly impressive. And now we've seen him do it off the blocks. There was a rumor going around for a long time, and there might be some truth to this, that Lasha can snatch off blocks 230 kilos, and that's the most that he's ever done, supposedly 230. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Unfortunately for us, we can actually compare this to some other heavy block snatches. So Lovchev, of course, the Russian who was popped in 2015, there's a video of him snatching 210 kilos off blocks from I think 2014. Lovchev, as with all things Lovchev does, moves a little bit quicker and he probably catches it a little bit slower. But even so, the 210 looks great. I think arguably Lasha's maybe looks slightly easier, but the difference is we do actually have a video of a 220 kilo block snatch from Lovchev as well, which one of the most criminally underviewed videos ever, just because, well, it's 220. I mean, up until 2017, we'd never seen 220 by anyone ever, anywhere. So this should have been a way more kind of impressive lift for people to have seen. But even so, 220 from Lovchev, at that point, you've got to give it to Lovchev just because it's 10 kilos more. But even so, Lasha made this 210. You look at it and you think, there's no way you can do 20. And to be honest, I think you'd be right to think that. Now guys, once again, the Weightlifting House News Show is brought to you by Red H Nutrition. Now, Red H Nutrition are really making great strides in trying to become the official supplement company, I suppose, of weightlifting. And of course, every week you see me talking about these supplements, but what you guys probably don't realize is that after I film these things, behind the scenes, there are real conversations, there are real commitments being made by Red H Nutrition towards the weightlifting community. In fact, right now we're talking about developing a new product made by weightlifters specifically for weightlifters. And I have a large say in exactly how that's going to go down. So obviously I'll keep you guys up to date with that as and when I'm able to. But in the meantime, of course, you can support the Weightlifting House News Show by supporting Red H Nutrition. Never underdosed and always WADA friendly. And guys, don't forget you can use code WEIGHTHOUSE15, that's with a capital W and a capital H, and that will give you 15% off all Red H Nutrition supplements. Once again, that is code WEIGHTHOUSE15, capital W, capital H, for 15% off all Red H Nutrition. Moving across now to Moldova, we have the 73 kilo Robu Marin, also known as the stankiest legged weightlifter of all time. Now, this week he hit 160 kilos in the snatch, which is a huge PR for him. And it's a big lift. I mean, it's 8 kilos under Shi Xiong's world record. But I first posted a video of Robu after I filmed him at the Roma World Cup, where he snatched 152 kilos for, I think, maybe a personal best at the time, or right there around. And it won him the gold medal in that 73 kilo class at the Roma World Cup. But I posted this video because he had the stankiest legs ever. I mean, he caught this bar, his knees almost touched. I think at one point his knees were behind his heels. Got in a position I didn't think was possible, not least with double body weight over your head. And that video, just because of the thumbnail, got something like 200,000 views, which is just ridiculous. But I'm kind of making it my mission to make Robu Marin famous. He is a guy who people need to follow, just because watching him it's so exciting. It's kind of refreshing to see someone move so differently to what is, I guess, more conventional. He is very atypical with his movement. He's exciting to watch and still very young. The fact that he's hitting 160 in the snatch at this point is very exciting. So guys, go check out Robu Marin from Moldova. Now, speaking of Moldova, we now have the Moldovan-born, Azerbaijani, Romanian weightlifter Cristina Iovu, the 55 kilo weightlifter who, yes, has competed for 3 countries at this point. She competed for Moldova, then she moved to Azerbaijan, and then she moved to Romania, southeast, I think, is how that part of the world is made up. And she now competes for Romania. She's 55 kilo weightlifter, and she just posted a video of a 150 kilo back squat double. Now, of course, this is a huge lift. I mean, it's not too far off 3 times body weight for a double. In fact, I think she probably could squat almost close to 3 times body weight at 165. She posted a video as well within the last month of a 160 back squat. And though it looked heavy, I wouldn't be surprised if there were a few more kilos room there for her to hit that triple bodyweight back squat. Now, for those of you who don't know Cristina Iovu, she's actually a 2-time European champion. She's medaled at World Championships in the past. She's medaled at the Olympics in the past, but she's also been popped in the past. So a lot of her medals and a lot of her accolades have all disappeared. But she seems to be in good form. I mean, as well as that 160 back squat and the 150 double, she also hit 120 kilos in the jerk off the racks. Now, her best clean and jerk is 125, so it's a little bit below that. But considering the ease of this 120, I'd say she's probably in a position to start competing at the high levels once again. Now, it's time to talk about the saddest news from the week. In fact, this is the saddest news in weightlifting that we've had in a long time. Rebeka Koha, the Latvian sensation, has officially announced her retirement. Now, I understand that the proximity of this news to last week's announcement of the fact that she's made this religious conversion might rouse some level of suspicion in people. I've seen the comments, I know what people are saying and thinking. But as far as I can tell, and as far as it seems whenever we've looked up anything in the news, there is not necessarily any relationship between Rebeka Koha retiring from the sport and her decision to convert to Islam. In fact, what looks like a sudden retirement might in fact not be so sudden at all. I think what this might be is the conclusion to what has been quite an ongoing complication over Rebeka's knees. I mentioned last week actually during that episode that Rebeka had been complaining about her knees, her coaches had been trying to help her, and she was in a position where she was really struggling to train. And it looks actually like this might be the root cause of the retirement. So the way that this kind of went down is that Rebeka Koha is currently living in Turkey with her fiancé. And it was while she was there that she requested some kind of video conference with the Latvian Olympic Team Committee, where she expressed her feelings that she wanted to retire from the sport. And as far as I could tell, everything seemed very amicable. They in return expressed their gratitude for, I guess, what was about 7 years of her life dedicated to Latvia. And they also decided that she would receive funding from the Latvian Olympic Committee until the start of September. So she's got 1 more month essentially on the Latvian payroll. So a guy called Fabin, who is the Olympic team manager, actually announced to Latvian News that Rebeka Koha had been considering retiring due to the postponement of the Olympics. One of her other coaches said that Rebeka had even considered the fact that she was going to retire from the sport after this Olympics anyway. And so because of this additional 1 year postponement, kind of coupled with the fact that she had really severe knee injuries, was probably the last straw. It's the straw that broke the camel's back and caused her to actually announce this retirement officially. During the call between Fabin and Koha apparently thanked her 2 coaches for all the time and dedication that they'd given her. And those 2 coaches are Victor Skabathis, he's the 2-time Olympic medalist and the 2007 world champion, and Edwards Andruskovic, who was a guy who competed in the USSR a long time ago. He competed at things like the Spartakiad and that kind of thing, and then since went on to become a really incredible coach, actually coaching Victor Skabathis before he then went on to join him and started coaching Ritvars and Rebeka Koha. Victor said that the decision might be the right one, but he didn't deny that it's a shock that Rebeka decided to end her career. He said that she's been haunted by health problems, her knees are hurting, and there's basically nothing that can be done about it. Supposedly she can walk, but she can't squat, and if you can't squat, you can't train. If you can't train, you're not going to become an Olympic champion. And with Rebeka Koha, supposedly, she's not going to compete, she's not going to train for 10th place. There's just no point for her. She only wants to go and win, and if she can't train properly, then she's out. So I think it's time that we all kind of realised and accepted the fact that Rebeka Koha is now gone from our sport. She did a lot of incredible things, and in fact one of her coaches said that there's a chance she might come back after the Olympics if she can find a way to heal her knees. You never know, but realistically I think that this is the end for Koha. She did a huge amount for our sport. I mean, just the profile that she was able to develop through her videos and then all of the videos that ATG was able to put out about her really drove a lot of people into the sport and inspired people to not only try and train harder, but I think more specifically lift better, because she always had such beautiful technique. But I think this is the end for Koha. And so I think what's probably worth doing now, as we may never actually even talk about her again, is just go through some of her accolades over the last 7 years. So what did Rebeka win? Well, I've got a list written out here of everything. There's just so many things, there's no way I could possibly remember off the top of my head. But I thought it'd be worth going through some of these and just seeing how incredibly accomplished she was by this age of 22, where she's announced her retirement. She won a European Youth Gold Medal at the under 15 and under 17 age groups, a World Youth Championships under 17 silver medal, that was in 2015, a Youth Olympics gold medal in 2014. She was a 4-time European Junior Gold medalist at 2015, 16, 17 and 18. She holds the European Junior records in the Snatch at 103 kilos and in the Clean and Jerk at 124 kilos and then the total at 227 kilos, all of which still stand. She won a gold medal at the 2019 European Under-23s. She has 2 European Senior Gold medals from 2018 to 2019, plus a silver the year before in 2017. She has a European Senior Snatch record of 103 kilos, which still stands. She has 2 Junior World Championships gold medals from 2017 and 2018. And lastly, she has 2 Senior World Championships bronze medals from 2017 and 2018. So it's been great watching Rebeka Koha develop over the last few years into the weightlifter that she's become. I always kind of hoped that she'd stick around long enough to win a gold medal at the World Championships level. One day, I suppose, when Kwosing Chun is gone, I always thought that maybe Koha would move into that spot as the top lifter in that weight class. But even so, sometimes things don't work out that way. So on behalf of everyone, I guess, we wish Rebeka the best in her new life outside of the sport of weightlifting. Moving over now to Denmark, we have a repeat offender. She was on the podcast last week. It's Sandra Jensen, 49 kilo lifter, aka Strong Piglet on Instagram. And last week I mentioned the fact that she'd snatched 80 kilos for PR. This week she hasn't done that, but she did compete, which makes, I guess, all of these lifts a little bit more important. She went 6 for 6, she snatched 78 kilos, that was a 2 kilo competition PR, and she clean and jerked 91. So phenomenal lifting from her. Also earlier in the week, or maybe it was after the competition, I'm not quite sure, she doubled 74 kilos in the snatch for a PR too. Next from Denmark, we have a lifter called Omed Alam, the 81 kilo lifter who I spent a lot of time with actually in Qatar back in December. We shared a lot of Shake Shacks in the days building up to competition where he competed. But this week he just hit 150 kilos in the snatch, which I think is a 5 kilo PR for him. He'd done 145, but it was quite a while ago at this point, and so finally for him to do 150 was a really big moment. Now, not only is Omed very mobile, I mean, you can see in that snatch, he gets under the bar very low. He's also got some crazy hyperextension in his elbows, but he's also ridiculously impressive overhead. In fact, about 8-9 months ago, he PR'd his front squat at 195 kilos, and I think at that point, he could jerk 200 kilos. He could jerk significantly more than he could front squat, which to me is just completely ridiculous. But he is putting in a lot of work to try and get stronger. In fact, just recently he PR'd his back squat by 10 kilos at 240 kilos. So for an 81 kilo lifter, he's actually kind of getting there very slowly but surely. So I think with 150 snatch at a 240 kilo back squat, once he can start pushing that back squat into the kind of 600 pound, 272 kilo range, we might start seeing him being a little bit more competitive internationally with some of those top dogs. Okay, moving across now to the other side of the world, to the USA, we have 81/87 kilo Jenny Arthur, who this week posted a video of a 130 kilo clean and jerk off the low blocks. Now, we don't really get to see much of Jenny on social media. Of course, she competed at the 2016 Olympics, so everybody knows who she is. I actually ended up spending some time just hanging out with her at the World Championships this year, which was pretty cool, getting to know her there. But we don't really see much of her progress in terms of lifting. At the World Championships, she clean and jerked 139 kilos, which was an American record at the time. But everything that Jenny does looks really easy, so it's really hard to kind of actually gauge how good she is at the moment. The 139 that she did at the World Championships looked like the kind of lift that might be her final warm-up before she goes out. I think part of that is just because she has this real preoccupation in a good way with perfect movement. I think to some extent she has that naturally, partly as well it's because, you know, she's engaged to Nark Vardanian, who moves just about as well as anyone in the world has ever moved, but it's very hard to work out exactly what her top lifts at any given moment might be. This 130, however, makes me think that she's easily got 140 kilos in her at the moment in the clean and jerk. So right now, in terms of Robu points for the whole world in the 87 kilo class, Jenny Arthur sits in 6th, which would be enough to go to the Olympics. Of course, you've either got to be in the top 8 or the next highest in your continent. She would be going, or she would be in the position to go right now, would it not be for the fact that Mattie Rogers is actually sitting in 3rd place in that weight class. So what makes things kind of interesting here is the fact that Jenny Arthur has actually out-totaled Mattie several times. In fact, Jenny Arthur's best performance from the last few years is 107/140 from the Arnold Championships this year, and that gives her a really good, positioning to do well at the Olympics. But Mattie Rogers has been competing in a slightly lighter weight class, in a weight class where she technically is more competitive, or at the very least, she's lifting weights that are closer to the world record than Jenny is closer to the world record in this heavier weight class. And so what Mattie's doing is she's going to move up to the 87 kilo class, take all of the Robu points that she's collected from the lighter weight class, and be able to rank higher in the 87 kilo weight class, and essentially take the position for the Olympics away from Jenny. So we're going to be in a weird situation potentially where the person who totals the least of the two is the person who goes, because they've been able to secure points at a lighter weight class. Now, this isn't something that people shouldn't do. I mean, if I was in Mattie's situation, I'd do the same. So would all of you watching. It's the right thing to do. It's the move. Like, you have to do that. It's the best way to go to the Olympics. It's just a very weird situation. It's maybe one of the flaws that you could see with the new Olympic qualification procedure. But even so, it's the way that I think things have to go. So to put it into perspective, if we look at both of their best performances, at the World Championships, Mattie did something along the lines of a 239 kilo total. A few months later, Jenny Arthur just did 247 kilos in the total, but because Jenny was an 87 kilo weightlifter, she only got around 560 Robu points. Mattie, on the other hand, would have hit somewhere in the mid 800 points. And quite rightly so. It's a better performance, it's a better total. She's closer to basically the peak of what someone at that body weight can do. But the weird thing is that she can now bring those points up to the 87 kilo class, and so even though she totals less than Jenny, she'll be ranked ahead in the qualification process for the Olympics. So hopefully that all makes sense to you guys. And let's just stick with Mattie Rogers, because once again, she's lifting really well. And that's the exciting thing. It might actually be that by the time she goes to the Olympics, if she goes, she is actually outlifting Jenny at that point. And I really wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the speed that she's progressing at this point is incredible. This week she snatched 105 kilos for a bunch of singles off the blocks, and they looked easy. She also snatched up to 107 kilos from the floor. Again, it looked very routine. It looked like maybe even an opener for her, which would be amazing. She then hit 128 for a clean plus 2 jerks, a 157, I think it was, kilo front squat, which is the most I've seen from her. It was probably an RP 10, but it's still really big. So it might be that despite at the moment we're seeing this little bit of weirdness between the totals and the Robu points of Mattie and Jenny, it might actually be that the person who is going to perform the best at the Olympics is the person that goes to the Olympics. Next we have Jessie Stamo, who is just edging closer and closer to that American record in the snatch in the new 81 kilo weight class. She did 105 kilos from the floor at the Roma World Cup, and then she just hit 108 kilos off blocks. Now this is 1 kilo under the American record of 109 kilos. It seems likely that under the guidance of Spencer Arnold from Power and Grace Performance, we might start seeing Jessie Stamo push up towards take attempts and then eventually get that new American record at 109 kilos. This week she also broke an 18-month gap in PRing her jerk at 142 kilos. So it looks like everything is moving in the right direction for Jessie. And finally from the USA we have Jourdan Delacruz, the newly 49 kilo Jourdan Delacruz. Now in the same way that Mattie took her Robu points up, Jourdan has taken hers down from the 55 kilo weight class to the 49 kilo weight class, where she's just a little bit more competitive. This week she hit a 104 kilo Yoyo clean, as she calls it. It's kind of like 2 floating clean deadlifts plus a low hang clean. And that's 104 kilos. I mean, she holds the American record now at 108 kilos in this lighter 49 kilo class that she did as well at that Roma World Cup. Back as a 55 kilo weightlifter, she also held the American record, but back then it was at 116 kilos. So I feel like having come down rather than gone up, she has this kind of mental benefit of knowing that she can lift those kinds of weights. She's put those ridiculous numbers, the 116s overhead before. Coming down to the 49 kilo class, she's very mentally prepared to start moving into the 110 plus kind of performances in the clean and jerk. Moving down south to Brazil, we have Fernando Reis knocking on the door of the podcast once more. This week he did 240 kilos for a jerk out the rack. Now last week we saw him do 230 as a clean and jerk. This week 240, 10 kilos more, and that's just 2 kilos below the most we've ever seen from him put over his head. I mean, he did 242 at the Arnold Championships 2020, I guess the final live competition before everything closed up due to what's gone on in the world over the last few months. But it's really nice to see him putting that kind of weight overhead. He also hit 200 kilos in the push press. He said it was a old lift that he forgot to post, but even so, he's clearly looking very strong in the dip and drive right now. I was completely slated for in the comment section last week for calling him Julio Mayora. I didn't take Spanish, I got the pronunciation all wrong, but this week Julio Mayora, the 73 kilo weightlifter, posted a video of a 180 kilo clean plus front squat plus jerk. That's 91% of the world record. Now, that might not be the kind of lift that scares Shi Ziyong, the world record holder, too much, but he then went on to hit 180 kilos for a power clean off blocks. Now, that's the kind of lift that might do. Now, it's not the 190 that we saw from Shi Ziyong, that 190 power clean, the greatest power clean of all time in competition from the 2019 World Championships. But even so, it is a really impressive lift. It is 91% of the world record, and hopefully it's enough to scare Shi Ziyong at least somewhat. And then sticking with Venezuela, we have the 89 kilo Kedemar Valenilla, who just hit a 280 kilo front squat. Now, for those of you who don't know, Kedemar is the junior world record holder in the clean and jerk at 204 kilos. You may remember the video of him, the lift where he did it. He jumps back about a meter, about a yard, and then stands up incredibly easy. And that all kind of makes sense now that we see him do this 280 kilo front squat. I mean, 280 kilos is more than the kind of the squat legends in the heavier weight classes like Tian Tao have even posted videos of. I think we've only ever seen Tian Tao front squat 270, though no doubt he can do 280 or more. But even so, this 280 from Kedemar is truly amazing. And it looks like Kedemar is improving at the snatch and the clean and jerk too, not just the squats. In fact, in 2020 in training, he's hang snatched 170 kilos, and perhaps more impressively, or certainly more impressively, he block cleaned 215 kilos. And again, like you could imagine with someone who can front squat 280 kilos, he stands up that 215 incredibly fast. And in the context of the 89 kilo community as a whole, the most we've seen from an 89 since that weight class began overhead in an international competition is 210 kilos by Hakov Makrichian. So this is 5 kilos more. And of course, he didn't pull it from the floor. He didn't then put it overhead. But even so, to see another 89 kilo lifter pushing those 210 plus kind of numbers in any variation of the lift is exciting for that weight class. Alright guys, it is time for that part of the show. A lot of people love this part. It's the People's Lifts. If you want to be featured on the People's Lifts, just use the hashtag #ThePeoplesLifts and maybe include the hashtag weightliftinghouse for extra credit. And I'll go through the lifts, and I see something I like, I'll put you on here. Now, before we get into it, I don't want you guys to forget the Weightlifting House straps are out, and you can grab them now at weightliftinghouse.com. I'll put links down below to the USA store and to the European store. Incredibly strong, incredibly durable, made for a quick release in case you do end up missing a snatch behind. Like I said, did I say? I might have even forgotten to say this at the start. I've been training on this strap now for between 18 and 24 months, and that was prior to me getting hurt. And I saw no damage in the straps. I mean, they just held up. They lasted really well. And these are the same ones. We've just had them made slightly differently. And we've had them made and produced at large volume, large quantities. So guys, check those out. Links down below. Let's get into the People's Lifts. So we're going to kick things off with Madison Pennell. She's a Cal Strength soldier. And I almost feel bad putting her in the People's Lifts because she's actually lifting enormous weights. Now, Madison, or on Instagram, Mad Disson with a full stop or a period or whatever it is that you guys call it, and a couple of I's, so MAD period DIISON on Instagram. She just hit 103 kilos in the clean and jerk. Now, Madison's a 49 kilo lifter, so this lift is actually really, really impressive. I mean, it's enough to compete internationally had she been born in another country, but unfortunately she hasn't. But even so, it's certainly worth a mention. She just hit 100 kilos, and I think this was back in maybe March. She finally hit 100 kilos in the clean and jerk, and that was a big deal at the time. So to put another 3 kilos on in such a short period of time is really special. Last year, I think it was last September, I was actually at Cal Strength for a couple of weeks. I spent some time filming there, and I remember watching her, and I think she was at a point where she was maybe only at 96, maybe as much as 97, but probably more like 95, 96 kilos in the clean and jerk. So to see her over the year go from that to 103 is really impressive, especially when you start considering that the American record by Jourdan Delacruz is 108. She's only 5 kilos off that now, so I don't think it's going to be long before Madison goes from the People's Lifts to the main show. You can follow Madison Pennell at mad.disson with a double I, MAD period DIISON on Instagram. Next we have from the UK, Finley Austin, aka Finley Austin _ weightlifting. Now Finley is just 17 years old, and despite coming back from an injury, he just snatched 90 kilos for a triple. Now, it took me a long time to snatch 90 kilos for a triple, and I certainly wasn't 17 when I first did it. So shout out to Finley for that. He's actually already snatched 110 kilos, a weight that he's clearly going to surpass at some point. I think I actually went back through his Instagram and I saw that within the first year of him competing, he went from something like 81 kilos to 110 kilos in a snatch. Like, his progress was incredible. He's the English Championships bronze medalist, I believe, too. So go check him out because he's going to be the future of British weightlifting. So Finley Austin _weightlifting on Instagram. Next we have Matt Ratte, aka Matt Mighty Mouse Ratte on Instagram. Now I think that he used to be I think he was a really accomplished CrossFitter. He went to the CrossFit Games in 2016. I think he's been to a bunch of regionals, and it looks like now, or at least I certainly hope, he's made the switch to weightlifting. It's the natural progression from CrossFit to weightlifting. It seems like everybody I know who's in the sport, at least kind of a good proportion of them, went from CrossFit to weightlifting. And he did some really cool complexes this week. So the first was, and I've written these down because they're quite long, a paused clean pull plus low hang plus jerk at 162 kilos. And then also off blocks he did 163 kilos for a pull plus a clean plus a pull plus a clean. And I think he started taking a little bit of a while in between reps, so he kind of edited the gaps out. But even so, pull clean at 163. I mean, he can't be more than 85 kilos in body weight. Probably he'd be an 81 kilo competitive weightlifter. So these are actually really big lifts. And now under the guidance, or at least I think he's under the guidance of Power and Grace Performance, I can certainly see him getting to a position where we might see him start to medal on that national stage. Next we have a friend of mine, Chris Polzer-Thorne, aka CPT_WL on Instagram. That's CPT_WL. This week he went back to his old gym, the gym that I've been to a few times, a fantastic gym. They've got a couple of weightlifting house bars there, in fact, as well. It's Oxford Power Sports. And whilst he was there, he hit a new PB in the clean at 190 kilos. Now, Chris is a 109 kilo weightlifter. You know, he is a big guy, but even so, for him to get to that level is amazing. I think the first time I ever trained with him at Oxford Power Sports, he was clean and jerking somewhere around 150. And so in the last couple of years, to take it from there to 190, he's also jerked 200, is really exceptional progress from him. So guys, go follow Chris at CPT_WL on Instagram. And finally, we have a lift that I had to mention. This really needed to go in the news show. There's a guy called Luke Mander who's watching this right now, and he's probably smiling and thinking, oh God, I didn't think he was actually going to put this in the news show. Well, Luke, I did. So there's a guy called Luke who I've known for a couple of years. He came on the Pendlay seminar the first time, and I've been at various training sessions with him. In fact, Dan, the People's editor who works with me at Weightlifting House, is Luke's coach. And we were at the gym the other day filming actually to get good photos for these straps, and he was there training and doing jerks off the blocks. And his PR at the time was 145 kilos. He hit 146 for a PR. And then I said to him, in fact, I think we all just agreed, you've got to go for 150 because, you know, you might as well at this point. So he loaded up 150. He went over to the bar. Hopefully you guys have either seen this or are watching this now if you're watching it. Hopefully it's just playing on loop over and over again. And he gets aggressive. In fact, no, he doesn't. He forgets to get aggressive. He picks up the bar off the racks. He dips, he drives. He hits his nose and he misses because he just sort of took his nose out. The bar lands. Because he got hit in the nose, he then starts to get really annoyed. It kind of like gets him going. He grabs the bar again, like instantly, and makes the jerk, which I just thought was pretty cool. Just the fact that you could attempt a PR, use all the energy that you have to go for it, miss, and still have enough energy left over to actually make it straight after. So, Luke, congrats on the 150. I'm looking forward to the 155 next time we go and film some more videos and photos of the straps, I guess. Now guys, that is the end of this week's episode of the Weightlifting News Show. Sad news certainly with regards to the retirement of Rebeka Koha, but even so, there have been some really exciting big lifts. We've been able to see the return a little bit of Lasha along with some other absolutely fantastic weightlifters, which has hopefully cheered some of you guys up. Don't forget, head over to Red H Nutrition. You can use discount code WeightHouse15, that's a capital W and a capital H, for 15% off. If you go to Virus International, you can use discount code WeightliftingHouse for 10% off. That works in the USA and Europe. I think it's maybe one of the only discount codes in the USA that works at the moment, which is pretty cool. And of course, head over to weightliftinghouse.com. The links are all down below. We've got the plates, we've got the bars, we've got the t-shirts, and now we've got the straps. So what are you waiting for? Guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and I will catch you all on another episode of the Weightlifting House news show.